You're listening to the podcast Det autistiska rummet made by Outspace. My name is Serena and this is our 5th episode, which will be in English. In this pod, we strive to create an autistic space where we can reflect ourselves in each other and build knowledge about who we are. Here, the autistic thinking is the norm. In this episode, we'll talk to Hajo Seng about his workshops called Autistic Skills and his research on autism. Hajo lives and works in Hamburg, and he is a technical project manager at the National Library. In 2019, he received his PhD. In this podcast, you will, besides Hajo, also hear Hanna Bertilsdotter-Rosqvist and me, Serena. Hanna is an associate professor in sociology and senior lecturer in social work at Södertörn University. I, Serena, have a PhD in technology, but now runs projects in the field of autism. Hajo, Hanna and I are autists. We define ourselves as autists and see it as an important part of our identity. In the pod, we mention the work of Peter Vermuelen from Belgium and his idea that what characterizes autistic people is that we are context blind. We also mention Laurent Mottron from Canada and his research group that includes autistic researchers. Hajo, I met you about 10 years ago, and we've been discussing autism from that day on, and we met many times. You have also had workshops here in Sweden with groups of autistic people, which was very much appreciated. Now you finished your doctor thesis in autism. What is the name of it?
Autistisches Erleben, eine Collage. What means in English, it means autistic experience, a collage. It says something about the approach I have, just making some kind of collage in order to find out something about autism from a point of view of autistic experience.
What is the background of your research?
The background of this research is giving workshops for autistic people. They are called autistic skills workshops. I'm doing it for more than 10 years now, and have had hundreds of autistic people, I think more than 1,000 autistic people. So I got a certain picture of autism out of these workshops, out of my experiences with all these autistic people who are working together on the topic of autistic skills, which means they are in fact working on their own experiences with their autistic thinking, with their autistic perceiving, and the way they are within the world as autistic people.
It's a mapping of the autistic individual that you do. Do you find that it is done anywhere else, or that there are other people who are into this thinking that you talked about now?
I think yes. I think it's in fact my idea of or the underlying idea I got from Temple Grandin. So, but besides of this, I know only. I think that it's hard to get this really good scientific approach. So it's you have to do with aspects which are not easy to get when you do sciences. In fact, it's about the experiences of autistic people. You can't just watch them. You can't just make up some scales and say it's scale this one or more or whatever. So you have to rely on what people are talking about their own experiences, and you have to have some kind of setting or some kind of environment where you can in a very open-minded way you can talk about that, because it's the people they have to talk about themselves. So if you have some kind of scary or some kind of strange atmosphere, some kind of you're in some kind of hospital and doing some research things or something like this, it's not a good environment to open up yourself and to be very honest on telling what you're the way about the way you're thinking, about the way you're perceiving. But within these workshops with other autistic people, you have another environment of communication, and that's why autistic people can open up and talk about their experiences there, and they on the other hand they really feel that they are taken seriously, so that they are not other people just thinking they are telling rubbish or something like that. So that's I think that's one reason why these ideas aren't grasped so far.
Can I ask something? Because I think it's interesting with this. First, it's the kind of thing that if an autistic, as a self-identified or and self-aware autistic researcher is doing autism research, it's make something. It's both how you do research, that you do it in a kind of self-identified, self-reflective autistic position. Like you can be an autistic person doing anti-research about autism because you're not self-aware enough. So you need to, as an autistic researcher, you need to be really aware of your autism in order to use that in your own research to do really. I think you've been talking elsewhere about the autistic phenomenology
Yes.
that you use it both in your own life. There's
Yes.
also a method you have been using in your own life, and you can also use it now as a researcher. So you need to have that your own autistic self and be aware of that in order to do this kind of autistic research as you do.
Yes. Yes, I'm sure you have to have this. You have to reflect your own autism in a certain way, and for me, it's one aspect of my own, or within my own biography, is that I'm especially very hard to cope with my autism for quite a long time. So I was very far in my 30s from age where I was became able to do something like my own job or something like so I just for a long time I just went to from one niche to another and felt myself hardly being able to survive. Didn't know how I should relate to that or how should I understand that, and all those social issues coming as well, and so on. And so within the 1990s, I really hard did a hard work on that. I did some kind of psychotherapy, and so for example, my therapist told me that in order to cope with my autism, I have to become an autism specialist. So I took this in some way seriously, and now it's for me. It's I'm profiting a lot of it. So I think that a lot of autistic issues they which can be very troublesome when you don't deal with them in a proper way, or in a proper way, and they can be a gift, or can be a lot of opportunities if you learn how to deal with it in an appropriate way. So that's what my motivation for doing this workshops, autistic skills, just to give this idea other autistic people, and my experience is that they are very open to grasp this idea, and so they get this idea, and maybe they just have to see, okay, there are autistic people who just change their life or change their way of living by dealing in another way with their autism.
I'm thinking of what you said, that what your therapist said, that it was very important to understand and be an expert in autism, and how you learn how to sort of see from the outside, but then being able to do it together with other autistic people in order to make sense, so that you can understand yourself both from the inside and from the outside in a more accurate way, instead of it being distorted by ideas about autism, or ideas about you that is not actually correct.
Yes,
That is a very important part in this.
it's very important, in fact. Yes, we started these kind of workshops within a project in order to increase the chance of autistic people to get a proper job or proper living. And our experience was that when autistic people, when they came to us, they often they said something like, yeah, I'm not able to do a proper conversation, or I'm not able to read other people's minds, and so on. And so we understood that this is not the way to come to a proper living as an autistic person. So that's why we started this kind of workshops, just to have another focus. That's why they are called autistic skills, just to change the focus. So not from
In a make it a positive focus instead of a negative one.
yes, yes. So make a focus on your abilities, on your potentials, and not of everything you can't do in a proper way.
Because I think that is one things which when you discuss about disability versus skills, some people say, well, we shouldn't focus too much on skills because that means that we may not be able to get support to support with our disabilities. But in the same time, as you say, it's like all the talks about disability is like you never talks about what you really may develop, because you have also certain skills which are not only hidden but developable. But
Yes,
if you don't talk about, for instance, my thing is about different kinds of perceptions like sense, smells, and touch, and taste. And if I didn't got encouraged to develop those strengths of mine, maybe they would be not, perhaps not hidden, but underdeveloped. So I think it's also about autistic development. How do we kind of, as autistic people, is kind of supported in our own development?
yes. Also that's very important, that autistic thinking and autistic skills, of course, they have to be developed. Yes, and I think it's with disability. I think it's both. But the question is what you put into foreground and what you put into background.
And the problem is that we're often discarded or just thrown away because you come into a group of you're handicapped, so you are a problem, you have a problem. and
Yes, yes,
that's all there is. Or maybe you have some advantages, or maybe you can do something, but still you're so much sorted into to be in this group of handicap.
But also
yes,
that we are still in constant kind of situations where we are not, like in school, you're in a school setting which is not adapted to autistic people. So you're in kind of settings when you're not kind of, it's not supported in your own learning. So you kind of have to develop or learn by yourself because the mainstream situations is not adapted to your way of learning.
yes.
And what does that mean for people to become adults when you're constantly in those kinds of wrong learning settings?
Mm. That's a big problem, I think. Yes.
So I think when you're in a kind of group of autistic people, like in your workshops or in our kind of autistic space, it's like the place where you can learn.
Yes, yes, really, it's a really important aspect that you need those kind of spaces, and it's for autistic people, they're far, yeah, far too less those spaces for them to do such kind of learning. Yes.
Yes. I was just thinking of one more thing. I listened to Vermuelen, a Belgian, was on his workshop on the net in his course,
Ah,
and he was.
I talked to him once with my about my
You did?
thesis. Yes.
Yes.
Yes. I met him on a conference some years
Yes.
ago. Yeah.
So he stresses that we are context blind, autistic. That is the way of understanding autistic people, that we are context blind. And he talked about the mind that sees directly the autistic people, and then this with the predicted mind. But with the predicted
Yes.
mind, you do also see the context, and so you are not blind in that way. So we could talk from the other way and see it from the other way, that if you also always have this context, the context could be a model of is this a model of the world?
Yes.
Because depends on what context we are talking about. If we are kind of aware of that, which we have been talking about previously in this pod, is like the different kinds of contexts. And what does it mean to be context blind? Might be, okay, you are not into that kind of social game things that anti people are. And that doesn't mean that you're context blind, but you're not really into that kind of social gaming. But you may be very well of other things which the anti people doesn't notice at all about what is actually happening in the context as well. Both perceptions and feelings and everything, which is also part of the context. So it's also about what is included in that context.
Yes.
When they're talking about us as context blind. Because maybe that's a very narrow definition of context.
Yes, that's it, yes. And that tells a lot about the researchers, I think.
Yes.
That tells that they are really very focused on this social context and this context of social meanings, especially, and everything else is some kind of, you don't need it, you can have it, but you don't need it. What's important is this social context, and my way of perceiving the world is completely different to that.
And they are talking about their own context, their social
of course,
context. So if come into our group with autistic people and see what context we have, they will miss it.
Yes.
So that's really the important lessons for anti-researchers is that they do have an anti-context, and they need to be aware of that, because they can research autism or autistic people if they are not aware of that they are in an anti-context, and they try to look at autism from their kind of anti-ideas or anti-perspective. That way, so radical when an autistic aware person who is also autistic, so not only have autism but also is autistic aware, to use that and look upon autism is really powerful.
Can you say that again?
I think the thing with your kind of position, Hajo, is that, as I was into before, it's like not only you are an autistic person, but you're an autistic aware autistic person, so you know your autism. And from that perspective, from that knowledge, you are researching autism. So I think it's not enough to be an autistic person and have autism to do autistic aware autism research. So you can also be an anti-person who is quite okay, who is kind of anti-aware and doing autism research. But if you're an anti-person who's blind to your autism or you're anti or whatever, you have to again start with your own position.
Yes.
And think, what does that do? What is it doing with the research?
Yes. That's right, and I think that's what a mixed research group like that of Laurent Mottron can just do. That the non-autistic participants within this group they become some kind of anti-aware while communicating and dealing with other autistic people on the same level. I think that's an important aspect of this.
That's extremely important aspect. That actually could change the whole idea of what autism is.
Yes. Yeah, one interesting aspect of my experiences with this workshop is that you have a really different kind of conversation within an autistic environment compared to other conversation environments. And I had participants within these groups who said, I never function within a group. I never get along with other people within a group. And they were really surprised that within this autistic group, everything functions very well. And they often make this kind of experience that this autistic group functions completely different to other conversations or conversation experience they had. Even juveniles, for example, or younger autistic people realize that. And I found out that they only need very little time, maybe 1 minute, 2 or 3 minutes at the beginning to realize that, and then they know, and it's very clear this group is functioning completely different to everything I ever experienced within my life. And for me, it's very interesting to see that it takes only so little time. It's really some kind of
immediate recognition of each other.
Some kind of immediate recognition, yes, of this conversation situation, yes.
And you've been listening to the podcast The Autistic Room. In this episode, you heard Hajo Seng, Hanna Bertilsdotter-Rosqvist, and me, Serena Hasselblad. Dennis Hansson was responsible for the editing. The podcast has its background in our book Autism inifrån, speglingar av ett autistiskt vi. In English, Autism from Within, Reflections of an Autistic Us. So far only available in Swedish. More information on our website outspace.se. The music in the podcast is an interpretation of a folk song from the Faroe Island about the seal people, a special arrangement by Åsa Lindström. Åsa also sings with Eva Robbins and Carolyn Corbin.